Don't worry, kids. This is not one of my online how-to lessons. Instead, this is a video for you to experience costume and set from one of the master directors. That's right. Time to talk about Tim Burton. And this is a behind the scenes of both Edward Scissorhands and Alice in Wonderland. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Huge house, isn't it? Hello? Why are you hiding back there? You don't have to hide from me. I'm as harmless as cherry pie. Those are your hands? Those are your hands. I think you should just come home with me.
Joyce, I just saw this strange guy driving with Peg.
Did you get a good look at it?
Hi! Scissors.
Whoa, it's a heck of a handshake you got there, Ed.
Kim, this is Edward who's gonna live with us.
Well, this must be quite a change for you, right, Ed?
Those things are cool. Can I bring him to show and tell on Monday?
He's a highly imaginative character. It seems clear that his awareness of what we call reality is radically underdeveloped.
Eddie, you take my very breath away.
Do you have a girlfriend?
Is there some special lady in your life?
Hey! Call a doctor. He skewered Kim.
Just a scratch. The power of Satan is in him. I can feel it.
Drop your weapon!
All along, I felt in my gut there was something wrong with him.
From Tim Burton comes the most incredible tale of a most unusual character. Edward Scissorhands.
Hold me. I can't.
The following presentation is rated PG. Viewer discretion is advised.
Those are your hands?
It was an unforgettable fantasy from one of Hollywood's most imaginative directors. It was a daring movie breakthrough for a TV heartthrob out to shatter his image.
The character just had this profound, effect on me.
Hold me. I can't.
And it offered a movie swan song for a silver screen legend.
I have a present for you.
A cutting-edge filmmaker, a struggling star in the making, and a real-life Hollywood love affair. On Hollywood Backstories, Edward Scissorhands.
Hello? Avon calling. Why are you hiding back there? You don't have to hide from me. I'm Peg Boggs. I'm your local Avon representative, and I'm as harmless as cherry pie. I can see that I've disturbed you. How stupid of me. I'll just be going now.
Don't go.
What happened to you?
Released in 1990, Edward Scissorhands told the fantastic and touching tale of a kindly inventor's unfinished creation. A boy with scissors for hands who longs for acceptance from the hostile world around him.
What's your name?
Edward?
I think you should just come home with me.
The character is an outsider and is very different and feels very different from everyone else, but yearns to be understood. And I think that's the beauty of Edward Scissorhands.
Edward Scissorhands was the most personal film to date for director Tim Burton, a former Disney animator who based the character on his own teenage longings.
It first started out of just those very simple teenage impulses of the feeling of wanting to touch and wanting to communicate but not being able to.
As a teen in the early 1970s, Tim Burton was both fascinated and repelled by the cookie-cutter world of suburbia that surrounded him.
Tim grew up in Burbank, and that kind of homogeneity, the consistency of the houses looking the same, the weirdness of, you know, going into your friend's house and it's the same house as your house. It's so formative for Tim.
He was a loner. He wore braces till he was, I think, 17, and he was like the odd man out. But he enjoyed it because he observed.
When he wasn't at the movies, enjoying the elegant villainy of his idol Vincent Price, Tim expressed himself through drawing. And among his sketches was the picture of a boy who summed up Tim's own sense of being different. In the years that followed, Burton used his imaginative gifts to launch himself as a filmmaker. And in 1986, he was introduced to a writer named Caroline Thompson, who shared his quirky sensibility.
I had written a really twisted little Gothic novel, and so we immediately realized we were kindred souls and knew we wanted to work together. Tim said, well, you know, there is this drawing that I made in high school, and it's of this guy who's got scissors instead of hands. It was like the angels opened up. It was the stupidest image I had ever heard in my life, and it was the most brilliant image I had ever heard in my life. It was brilliant because it so clearly expressed how people feel.
Without even seeing the drawing, Thompson excitedly began work on a first draft, which drew from her own similar experiences in suburbia.
The movie started out as a musical in our minds. I wrote some hilarious lyrics. One of my favorite songs was, I Can't Handle It. We were afraid that this sort of slight edge of surreality that we wanted to play with wouldn't be acceptable to people, and that if you did a musical, you could do anything. But when Tim read the first draft, he just immediately felt that it was going to work on its own.
By the time Thompson and Burton signed off on the script, Tim had agreed to make what was destined to be a mega-budget blockbuster, Batman. But for Burton, no project was more personal than Edward Scissorhands. And in 1989, thanks to the success of Batman, he and producer Denise DeNovi secured one of the most extraordinary studio deals of the day.
We would develop the script, and if they liked it, fine. If they didn't, fine. But we weren't going to go through the development process, making a film by committee.
I would turn the script in, and 1 week later, the studio had to say yes or no. And that was that.
In 1989, 20th Century Fox gave Burton and his team a green light and a budget of $20 million, even though the script was defiantly different from any other. The director knew that Edward Scissorhands' success depended on the actor who would play the title role.
Tom Cruise sniffed around it for a long time and was really into it, but got hung up on how does he go to the bathroom. Well, I didn't want to go there. Bill Hurt wanted to do it really badly. And Robert Downey Jr. I do remember, and actually I thought was a terrific idea.
But there was another candidate, Johnny Depp, the real-life boyfriend of Edward Scissorhands' leading lady, Winona Ryder. By 1989, the 26-year-old actor had achieved stardom on the TV teen hit 21 Jump Street. But Depp's heartthrob looks were deeply at odds with his sensitive and quirky personality.
The general public had been sold an image, which was a character that I played on television, not anything like what that character was.
When Depp read Edward Scissorhands, he bonded instantly with the character, who was also totally misunderstood due to his appearance.
I'll never forget it. He walked in, he's very shy, and he kind of was looking around for us, and I just saw these eyes looking around, these big, gentle, doe eyes, and Tim and I just looked at each other like, that's him, you know?
That's my family. Now, come along, dear, and I'll show you the rest of the house.
Burton had found his movie alter ego. He had also scored a shrewd casting coup, pairing two real-life lovers in their first film together.
Winona was just 18. This was kind of really her first big romance, and it made it a more special experience for everybody, I think, because they were really falling in love.
We were both nervous before we started, but it's been going really well, and I think it's one of the best experiences I've ever had. It's exciting and scary, but that only makes you want to do a better job.
But audiences expecting a traditional love story were in for a shocking surprise. Like the character himself, Edward Scissorhands the movie was about to step out into a strange and sometimes dangerous new world.
See, I was hoping for something big and kind of bouffant, you know, kind of like mine. Now, don't you worry, Kisses, you're going to be just fine, honey. You're going to be so pretty. Yes, you are. Oh. Oh, Eddie, is there anything you can't do? You take my very breath away, I swear. Look at this. Have you ever cut a woman's hair?
On March 26, 1990, director Tim Burton assembled his cast of rising stars and award-winning veterans like Alan Arkin and Diane Wiest for the first day of filming on Edward Scissorhands. It came after an intensive search for the perfect locale to film the story. Ultimately, Burton found his fantasy suburbia in a newly built community near Tampa, Florida.
About half the houses hadn't been sold yet. You know, it was like having our own little back lot to shoot in.
Well, one thing in the movie that was inspired by shooting in Florida was the waterbed. When Tim went on a location scout, every house he went to had a waterbed.
Fortunately, inspiration and perspiration went hand in hand on the humid Florida shoot.
Johnny was a saint making that movie because wearing that suit in the heat in Florida, the suit was really skin tight. We put a kind of a cooling element underneath, but it didn't really work, and the hands are heavy.
More difficult for Depp was the actor's ongoing struggle to bring humanity to a character that began as a two-dimensional drawing.
A lot of the things that Tim and I talked about was just to maintain the purity of the character, and things that people would set on their tables would become fascinating and another world for him. I knew that early on it would rely on gestures and expressions. And Charlie Chaplin, I watched a lot of Charlie Chaplin movies. The way he walked, I thought, said so much about the character.
The first day of shooting, we reshot. We hadn't quite found the voice yet and the character.
One helpful insight to the role came from writer Caroline Thompson.
Well, I actually based the character on a dog that I used to have. She was so present that she could do just about everything but speak, and you could feel her, you know, wanting to describe the world to you, wanting to participate. That's how Edward seemed to me.
I kept thinking of a dog. I kept thinking of that unconditional love, and the way that if you scold a dog, you know, he cowers to the corner.
The character came alive with Johnny Depp's performance. It was brand new, and it was totally out of Johnny Depp's heart and mind. You sit back and you went, well, yeah, of course, that's him.
That was the single most thrilling experience of my whole life.
In finding the role, Depp was also helped by the character design of Oscar winner Stan Winston.
It was a stretch because Tim is the most free-thinking and imaginative director I've ever worked with. He's very theatrical. He is not grounded in what is the reality of these scissor hands. It was more of a challenge for me to think as freely as Tim. The blades on the glove hands were plastic. We actually created a pair for him early on so that he could take them home and try and figure out how would he get things done if actually he was encumbered by these hands.
Work with a remote control on a television set is virtually impossible. Going to the bathroom, you know, it's something you don't even want to talk about. It's just, but after a while, it just became the second nature.
We also created a mechanical pair, and we call them our insert hands, which were operated by 4 or 5 puppeteers that actually could cut.
Make it a 5-run inning and blow this game to pieces.
I'll be darned.
For Tim Burton, the most fulfilling aspect of Edward Scissorhands was the chance to work with the man who had been his lifelong hero. Vincent Price.
One of my favorite memories in my career is being able to witness Tim Burton working with Vincent Price, because he really idolized Vincent.
Tim used to go see all those Corman horror movies at his local movie theater in Burbank, and he loved Vincent, I think, because he made evil understandable and seductive and charming.
By 1990, the 79-year-old legend was seriously ill, but Price gratefully accepted the role, a role that reflected Burton's own affection for the actor, who had become a real-life mentor.
There was an old man from the Cape who made himself garments of crepe. When asked, will they tear, he replied, here and there, but they keep such a beautiful shape. That's right. Go ahead, smile, it's funny.
He creates Edward. He creates him out of a cookie heart, the heart of a cookie. It's a wonderful kind of comic, but very serious idea, because it is a fairy tale. It's a fairy tale with a moral.
For Tim, having my father validate his creative work was very important to him. The three of them, Tim and Johnny and my dad, connected.
To see Tim's face when he was directing Vincent, the delight and the love and the, just the respect that he had for him, and how much Vincent appreciated that. It was a really beautiful relationship.
On July 20th, 1990, after 4 months of filming, Edward Scissorhands was ready for its crowning touch, a music score by Burton's favorite film composer, Danny Elfman.
Edward Scissorhands was definitely one of my favorite film scores because it was a very simple, clear narrative, musical narrative. There's an alienated character, and I think that's what he relates to, and that's what I relate to. A lot of directors would have listened to Edward's theme and go, I don't get it. This sounds like a Romanian, Hungarian, Jewish theme, and this character is not that. There's nothing Eastern European about it. What's the story here? But Tim would never do that. I don't think that way, and Tim doesn't think that way. When I finished Edward, I actually didn't think I'd done a very good job. I thought I'd kind of failed Tim, and in the end, it ended up being my most imitated piece. I've heard it used in 7, 8 major motion pictures and God knows how many commercials.
But in 1990, as Edward's release date approached, the movie's fate was anything but certain. Its delicate tone seemed even riskier after the worldwide success of Batman.
He and I were worried that people would say, oh, Tim Burton, the guy who did Batman, this is going to be like a big, comic book movie. And this was a smaller personal story.
Previews, are always a disaster, especially with Tim's movies. Odd or unique movies always preview terribly. Tim was pacing around in the lobby, trying not to throw up. And the audience who saw it so didn't get it. I mean, there were guys in Orange County where we previewed it that were actually siding with Anthony Michael Hall's character, the bad guy.
It's just a scratch, Jim. Really, it's okay.
Stay back, okay? You touch again and I'll kill you.
No, it's no big deal. It's just
Call a doctor. He's skewered kid.
No, listen.
Stay away from her, okay? I mean it. You can't touch anything without destroying it. Who the hell do you think you are? You've been hanging around here anyway, huh?
And they were going, well, I mean, he was right to want to beat up that fag because that fag was trying to take his girl. I swear to God, I kid you not. These were comments from the focus group after the movie. So you can imagine how Tim would react finishing that movie and hearing this kind of stuff from an audience.
It was a tricky film to market because from the visual you could think it was a horror movie or a scary character.
They did an ingenious ad campaign. They had all these images of the topiary, and all it said was Edward was here.
Gradually, the message was out. that Edward Scissorhands was a movie that defied any label. And on the eve of its release, preview audiences responded in a way that delighted the story's author.
It might be best if he goes back up there, because at least there he's safe.
And by the end, I heard sobbing. I was the happiest person on the planet. But while I was rejoicing, Tim's in the bathroom puking, so I imagine that it was all pretty tough for him.
On December 7th, 1990, Edward Scissorhands opened to solid box office and enthusiastic reviews, especially for Johnny Depp, who had finally shattered his pretty boy stereotype.
Hold me.
I can't.
You really felt for this character who was obviously very gentle and a very deep, poetic, beautiful character that was hindered by these dangerous hands. Tim just makes these people so sympathetic and so accessible.
For Tim Burton, one rave review meant more than any other. Vincent Price loved the film, and his friendship with Burton only deepened until the actor's death 3 years later at age 82.
My dad loved the whole experience of working on Edward Scissorhands. It was really his swan song.
Edward Scissorhands marked a happy marriage of many creative talents, but ultimately, it reflected the singular vision of Tim Burton, who drew upon his own fears and insecurities to create a figure embraced by audiences around the world.
Goodbye. I love you.
I was able to write a love poem for Tim to express himself through. It was my gift to him. And it is an extremely personal film for him, and I'm thrilled that I could give him the means through which to do that.
It truly represents Tim Burton's vision and not mine. There is a seamless film with characters and settings and stories that is completely 100% Tim Burton.
Edward Scissorhands is, to me, Tim at his essence, because there's the gothic horror, there's this sort of bizarre sense of humor, but there's an underlying gentleness to it, which I think is wonderful.
Everybody at one point or another feels like Edward Scissorhands. They feel misunderstood, they feel excluded. Edward's yearning to be accepted and his ultimate acceptance of himself, those things are going to be felt by people forever.
There is a place like no place on earth. Some say to survive it, you need to be as mad as a hatter, which luckily, I am. Alice, it's you. You're terribly late, you know, naughty.
Curious and curious.
It's a completely new story. It's Alice returning back to Wonderland.
She's no longer 10, she's 18.
Since you've been gone, the Red Queen has taken over all of Wonderland.
As they travel through Wonderland, Alice and the Hatter come across all these wild characters who become part of the force fighting the oppression of the Red Queen.
Need a pig here. I love a warm pig belly for my aching feet. Stop that.
Help us make the world right again.
Our heroine is going to have to really step up in a way that she never expected and save the day.
We have our champion.
I played the Mad Hatter. He's mad, he's unpredictable. He had this electric orange yak hair that had its own personality.
All together now!
Like a mood ring. His emotions are very, very close to the surface.
What is the Hatter with me?
He's so brilliant in his choices. It's really fun to get to work with him again.
What a regrettably large head you have. I should very much like to have it. I used to have the White Queen, you know. Poor dear, her head is so small.
It's tiny. It's a pimple of a head.
Alice!
Alice!
See? Alice? You're absolutely Alice. I'd know you anywhere.
Mia's incredible. She's just perfect for Alice.
You want somebody that's got a gravity to them, and just felt that Mia had that quality of being both young and an old soul at the same time.
Her experience in Wonderland is her finding herself again and finding that she, has the strength to be more self-assured.
From the moment I fell down that rabbit hole, I've been told what I must do and who I must be. This is my path. I'll decide where it goes from here.
The White Queen has had her crown taken from her, and she's powerless to stop her sister's reign of tyranny.
It is against my vows to harm any living creature.
It was fun to kind of explore the slightly off side of somebody who's supposed to be good.
Now, all we need is a champion. You're a little taller than I thought you'd be.
Helena Bonham Carter plays the Red Queen.
Find Ellis Stain. Find her!
She basically has no heart, even though she's a queen of hearts. And I have a really, really big head.
That's the magic of movies. Instant plastic surgery.
Off with his head! Where's the rabbit?
Over there. In the film, I play two characters, Tweedledum and Tweedledee. I'm Tweedle, he's Tweedledum. And Cherry was, I'm Tweedledum, he's Tweedledee.
That's odd.
Well, I'm a big fan of Matt Lucas. As is with a lot of great comedians, he's great at characters.
I kind of imagine them as naughty Victorian children.
To be able to do anything with Tim Burton is a real honor.
For as long as he's been making films, I've been going to them opening weekend.
I like it. The cool thing with Alice in Wonderland is that there's so many characters and there's so many surreal touches.
You're all mad.
Thanks very much.
I can't think of a subject better suited for his great imagination.
It's quite an amazing story, and the prospect of doing it in 3D, it was very exciting to me.
You're seeing so many different wild characters and great locations come together.
It's so beautiful in detail. I can't wait to see it in 3D.
We're just trying to put you right in the middle of this strange world and take you on this journey.
Hold on tightly.
Alice in Wonderland is an event. It's a world that no one except Tim could imagine.
When you combine these wild characters with Tim Burton's brilliance and his vision, it's a dream come true.
This is impossible.
Only if you believe it is.
Creating the iconic world and characters of Lewis Carroll's timeless classic Alice in Wonderland began with conceptual conversations and graphic explorations. During this conceptual phase, many directions were considered. Once the production design, visual effects, and director's vision was unified, pre-production planning moved quickly forward.
I told you she's the right Alice.
Since all of Wonderland is virtually synthetic, it was decided early on to acquire the live-action performance in a green screen environment. In addition, many of the characters were a hybrid of live action and animation. Numerous motion capture tools were tested and used mainly as reference for what was ultimately handled as animation. The challenge was to find the balance where CG and hybrid animated characters blended together with the live actors to look like they were all part of the same world. Alice falling down the rabbit hole was a lot of different techniques blended together to give us a sense that she was falling. Alice is a combination of a live-action Alice on wire rigs on a green screen shoot. The whole entire environment was created in the computer. All the roots, all the dirt, all the furniture, everything was CG. The shrinking shot of Alice, we wanted to try to do something where we don't lose sight of Alice to the last second and create a shot that you would do if it was really happening in front of you. So we blended a green screen version of Alice with a CG environment, and the whole room is CG at this point. Obviously, the dress is also all synthetic, and animated all that to look like she was shrinking down inside of it. And the whole scene with her meeting the Tweedles, the dodo bird, everybody else, is really our actress talking to voice talent and working with eye lines that were placed on the set, so we would get the proper dimensions of all the different characters she's talking to, and animated everything around her so it all made sense. The Bandersnatch sequence was a challenge, just trying to make this long chase with this creature running after Alice and shooting it on a stage that had limited space. The creature was sort of a conglomeration of monsters all blended into one. So by using treadmills and different tricks, we managed to give you the illusion that she's running through this vast expanse of mushrooms and different plants. And also trying to create the interaction between the environment and our actors was critical in making all of this work. The throne room is still one of my favorite scenes, and the interaction of the queen with the frogs and all the other characters, and especially creating this Red Queen character with the large head. We shot her with a 4K camera, and really through brute force, enlarged her head and blended it back onto her body in a way that looks like it's perfectly natural. And then once we saw the head that big, we decided creatively to take her waist into a more of an hourglass shape so it balanced that giant head better than leaving her the way she was. The Cheshire Cat scene was another cool scene to do because of the dark, moody, gloomy quality of the forest itself. And the cat also had to be an interesting, fun character, but at the same time makes you a little wary of what his real intentions may be. The lighting in this scene was a little more moody than a lot of the sequences in the film, so we were able to blend all the rays of light, everything that's going on in here, and Alice is the only real element.
It's you.
The tea party scene is the first time that we meet the Mad Hatter, and we had Johnny Depp's performance, and then we enlarged his eyes so they were abnormally big. Also in the scene, Alice is very small. We have a lot of animated characters, and also it's an interesting blend of a partial real set, and then everything blends into our CG world. At the end of it, we have our character Stain riding on a horse, rears up on the horse, surrounded by his soldiers. And the only thing that was real that we used in this scene was his head. His body is animated, the horse is animated, and all the soldiers and the environment are all synthetic. The execution scene was a challenge for all the different interaction of the characters, live action characters, animated characters, hybrid characters like the Tweedles and Stain. The crowd was shot separately than our principal performance, which were done earlier, creating this world that looks relatively real and yet fun and fanciful, even though it's a dark moment in the script. Creating the fight with the Jabberwocky was also a lot of fun. And really, again, it's our actress working against nothing on a green screen stage and then animating the Jabberwocky to be attacking her, chasing her, running through this green environment, which we later just synthetically created around her. This scene has a complete CG Alice in a CG environment with a CG Jabberwocky. And we used our CG Alice periodically during this battle sequence when we had very wide shots or when she had to do action, like when she chops off the Jabberwocky's head, that we couldn't get the kind of bravado that we wanted on a wire rig.
Off with your head!
Start by covering up your eyebrows and applying a light shade of foundation. Don't use a white face paint, you want to avoid the clown makeup look. Edward was pale, not white. Set your foundation in place with a light shade of powder or use an ordinary talcum powder. Taking a brown powder or a brown eyeshadow, start to darken the hollows of your eyes. You want to make your eyes look super tired, so leave the skin directly under the eye pale to create the illusion of having really baggy eyes. To create the sad expression Edward had, take the powder up from the side of the nose and a little above where your eyebrow would have been, and this will fake a sad expression. Now you have the basic shape you need to add more definition. So taking a smaller brush and a darker shadow, emphasise the hollows of your eyes even further. Edward's nose was thin and pointy, so contour down the sides of the nose to elongate it. This step isn't really necessary for the look, but I made my nostrils pointy like Edward's with a black eyeliner. To achieve the gaunt look that Edward had, apply a dark powder to the sides of your forehead, under the cheekbones and the sides of the chin. For the lips, I'm using a purple eyeshadow on a lip brush. The reason I'm not using a lipstick is because I want the matte effect that the eyeshadow will have. You want to avoid anything that has any kind of shine. Only apply colour to the centre of your lips to create the sad pouty look that Edward had. To further enhance the pout, apply the same contour powder as before underneath the bottom lip. For the scars I used fake skin. This fake skin had fibres in which made it quite stringy and perfect to use for the scars, but it's quite sticky and an absolute bugger to get off without ruining the rest of your makeup if you go wrong, so alternatively you could use a liquid latex. As long as you get the scars signature to Edward's look, for example the scars on his lips, on his nose and under his eye, you can get away with putting the rest wherever. Then set with a powder. To make the scars look more raised off the skin, add shadows to the edges with a brown eyeshadow. The Edward Scissorhands hair just involves a lot of backcombing. Grab sections and backcomb at the root, then all the way down the shaft of the hair. If your hair is quite long, pin up the length in the back and just work with the layers. Be generous with the amount of hairspray you use, and we're done.
I bet the view must be spectacular.
It's not heaven he's from. It's straight from the stinking flames of hell. The power of Satan is in him. I can feel it.
Well, he was born up there or something.
The years spent in isolation have not equipped him with the tools necessary to judge right from wrong. He's had no context. He's been completely without guidance.
about destroying you. Who the hell do you think you're even hanging around here anyway, huh? You're not finished.